Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Capricorn, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of April 2024. I hope you are well. I'm using the Llewellyn Tarot for you today. Before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That is link number 1 in the description box below this video. The second link is to my private community, which is the Order of the Phoenix over on the Circle platform. You can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost beyond the membership fee, and hang out with an extraordinary group of people. We do have classes running over there and whatnot. So feel free to avail yourself of that link if that sounds interesting to you. The third link that I've done is to 3-month overviews for each of the signs. They run from April to June 2024, obviously. We're moving into pretty tumultuous times, and I think if you feel like you would get some benefit from knowing how this might affect your sign in particular, then those readings probably can come in pretty useful. So, like I said, that's link number 3. Right, Capricorn, let's see how... let's see what's going on with you. Let's flip the camera around. Can you tell me, please, give me 3 cards for Capricorn, please. So, in your recent past, we have the Hierophant. That's Taurus in the Major Arcana. Current energy, please. We have the 4 of Swords. And what's coming towards Capricorn, please, for April? We have the 8 of Wands. I would say there's possibly an important conversation coming up, but, well, important information coming in, but it's probably more importantly a conversation, I think, Capricorn. Interestingly enough, we do have the 8 of Swords at the bottom of the deck, so you've got double 8s on the table. And whenever 8 appears anywhere, we're usually dealing with power and empowerment, where we are not accessing it in our, in the best way possible, and where circumstances are sort of closing in on us to make us dig deep and look for a particular kind of power. Now, there's some overhaul of the way that you are thinking about a situation that is sitting at the root of what is going on with you in April this month. The 8 of Swords can sometimes feel like being trapped or confined by circumstances or potentially by people. But the power in the 8 of Swords is the recognition that is the way that we're thinking about the situation that is causing that feeling rather than the situation itself. Now, this 8 of Swords here is a little more perilous than we see in other decks, and that probably is something to pay attention to. It might add some credibility to the fact that maybe there's kind of skirting around the edge of a perilous situation. But as with all things, the way out is through. And I think possibly some really open conversations where nothing is kept back and you are open to stuff might well facilitate easier movement this month. Now, before I say anything else, let me get some cards on the table. Tell me, actually, let's give these a good shuffle first. So, tell me about the Hierophant, please. Why is that here for? Right, we have got the 10 of Wands. And we've got the 8 of Swords appearing again. Okay, so we've got a continuation. Tell me about the 4 of Swords. Why is this here for Capricorn? They kind of fell out. We have the Page of Wands. We have the 2 of Pentacles. And we have the Wheel of Fortune. Tell me about the 8 of Wands, please. Page of Swords, very useful for the reasons that I've already laid out. And we have a reversal, and it is the 8 of Pentacles. Now, you don't have 3 8s, strictly 4. I mean, 4 cards numbered 8, but 3 different aspects of the 8 at play. And we have the 5 of Cups at the bottom of the deck. Now, between the 5 of Cups and the 8 of Swords, we have a stasis. And they're coming from slightly different perspectives. The 8 of Swords is mental restriction. It is where we are not thinking about a situation in such a way as to be able to see an exit from the situation. This is where we feel trapped and confined and whatnot. And it does place it squarely in the mind. The 5 of Cups is an emotional situation though, and it's one that's characterized generally by a sense of loss. You see in this card here, this man is looking at these 3 cups that have fallen over, and the water or wine or whatever it is that it contains is now draining away. Now it's actually water in the tarot that represents emotions, not the cups. The cups are simply the vessels that hold it. But where 3 of them have fallen over, 2 still remain. And the wisdom of this card when it shows up is to show us where we have become stuck on mourning something that has passed rather than embracing that something that still remains. It's a card that can be associated with grief or bereavement, but it can also represent resentment or bitterness. Essentially what it's doing is it's talking about holding on to the past. Now, if we've got a card that's talking about holding on to the past, and we've got a card over here that represents a stuck and trapped feeling, confinement, then there is the implication that we're spending perhaps a little bit too much time thinking about the past rather than driving forwards. And it's this situation that seems to want to break for us in April, one way or the other. You know, there's a lot of astrological weather this month. And I think it's fair to say that nobody's coming through April without being changed in some sort of significant way. And just the presence of the Wheel of Fortune on the table here would suggest that that is true for you as much as it is for everyone else. Now, it is one of only 2 major arcana that is on the table, and why that is significant is because the major arcana represents those kind of bigger energies that are at play, shaping and moulding both us and our experiences over the course of our lives, right? When you have a reading where a lot of major arcana turns up, these are pressures, stresses, or supporting energies that are trying to provoke some sort of response from you, some sort of change, some sort of, whatever. The minor arcana then correspondingly are the things that we have control over, the things that actually, we can do something with in the day-to-day. They are, in fact, our responses to the major arcana energies. Now, so much of it being minor arcana on the table, it really does feel to me like there's a lot of internal shifting that is going to happen this month and needs to happen this month, because by the cards that we see on the table, there is a great deal of restriction in your movement forwards, and none of this seems to be external. It may feel external, and if it does, then I would gently posit that here's one of the ways that you're thinking about it in the wrong way. There are a number of other signs this month who are also having a similar sort of message, which is to say that there are big, deep internal shifts that need to happen rather than any kind of expression on the material plane. So if you are in a state where you feel like it is reasonable for you to be holding somebody else responsible for where it is that you're sitting right now, then I would imagine that the events of this month will serve to try and correct that in some sort of way. So we start off with the Hierophant here. And the Hierophant it's actually an exceedingly complex card. But then I guess if you dig around in any of the tarot, any card in the tarot, there's a complexity that is sitting beneath the surface. It represents Taurus in the major arcana, and so we have Taurian themes that come to bear. It's fixed earth. It is, at its best, it is strong, it is stable, it is secure. At its worst, it is fixed and rigid and inflexible. The Hierophant can represent hierarchical structures. It can represent any kind of institution where there might be a hierarchy in it. So you can see, religious organizations or churches. Organized religion generally, right? Sometimes called the Pope card, organized religion. But it's the structure that is important and the hierarchy that goes with it. It could also be schools and universities and things like that. Anywhere where there is, other people and there's some sort of pecking order in that. I've even seen it represent martial arts clubs and all that sort of stuff, right? Anything where you've got somebody at the top who is either in charge or teaching in some sort of way, right? Disseminating to others. The interesting thing is, this is the only version of the Hierophant that I have, where it does not include some reference to acolytes. In the Waitsmith and just about every derivation that you see thereof, we have the Hierophant sitting at the top and we have acolytes at his feet, right? And he is dispensing knowledge. In the Tarot of the Abyss, they're all sat in a circle, right? There's more equality in that state. But here we have the Hierophant sitting alone. So there's a sense that he is perhaps communing with, the universe, God, whatever, and in a state of sort of kind of trying to teach himself rather than teach other people. Why am I mentioning this? Because it feels like something's trying to end with you, Capricorn. And what it is going to be different for each of you. But there's an additional meaning that I think is really, really important here. And that is heritage and legacy. Now, there is another card that I use that term to describe, and that's the Ten of Pentacles. And they're coming from slightly different perspectives. But with the Hierophant, what we have, even in the name, right? The name Hierophant means broadly, decoder of the sacred mysteries, right? It's somebody who can translate what is happening out there in the cosmos with God, with the universe, whatever, and bring it down to other ears. And the heritage and legacy aspect of it is because ancient wisdom gets passed down. Many other things get passed down too, though. And when the Hierophant shows up, it's a recognition that we are sitting in a cycle where perhaps we are perpetuating something. Well, we're all in a state of perpetuating something. But it's kind of an awareness of that. Like, what have you inherited from those that have come before you? And what is it that you're giving out? Now, it's the fact that there are no acolytes here means that something's come to an end. It's almost like whatever it is that you have been giving out or perpetuating, whatever cycle it is that you've been in, it stops here. It has stopped here. And with it stopping here, what we're doing is sort of stepping back and turning around and looking at it and going, well, is what I was trying to perpetuate the right thing? Are there ears to listen now? Is anybody actually interested in this? What I feel is that there's something that you've been kind of running on autopilot. Like some aspect of yourself that you've been running on autopilot that has recently started to look very different because it's trying to end. There's a state of completion that's happening here. We've got the Ten of Wands underneath that to agree that there is some sort of ending. We'll sort of validate that sense. And I think it's not that there are no neophytes or acolytes or whatever here listening to you because what it is that you have to say isn't worth hearing, but more because you require the silence that is necessary for self-examination to make sure that what it is that you have inherited and what it is that you are giving out is actually something that is in accordance with your values. Now, so many of us work on autopilot with a lot of things. Like we work to a particular script that quite often can be a trauma narrative that is just perpetuating over and over again. There's the possibility of an absolute halt when you get to the Eight of Swords. If you cannot recognize that it is the way that you're thinking about a situation that is causing the issue rather than the situation itself. And this Ten of Wands, whenever it shows up, although it represents an end, and that's a very welcome and useful thing, there's always the question that needs to be asked, which is, in this situation here, were 10 wands necessary? Did we need 10 wands? If we did need 10 wands, did we have to carry them all at once? There's there are a number of questions that you can ask about what is going on here, because it doesn't seem like a terribly logically enlightened way to carry 10 wands. There's a question of whether we've made life hard for ourselves. And this is why I think the Hierophant and the silence of the silence that seems to be informing the circumspection and the reflection is so very important. Because there's a question of what it is that you stand for, and whether you realised that that was what you were standing for. You know, there's a kind of self-awareness that's emerging here that's been obscured by something else, and I think that likely it is probably trauma that has done that. But the question of where you've made life difficult for yourself, and how it is that it's almost impossible to find your way out of where you now are. You know, in both these cards here, the vision is obscured. We've got a blindfold on the eyes of the woman here, and this man's got his head buried in sticks and he can't really see where he's going. Neither of these give any impression of the kind of energy for which Capricorn is famed, right? Having the vision of what it is that you want to achieve in the future, right? Retro-engineering the steps that are necessary for you to get there, and then putting your head down, blinkers on, and being like, right, I am headed that way. It's almost like everything is covered. And I think that, you know, whether it's delayed gratification or whether it is the vision to be able to put the systems in place for you to achieve the goal that you want to achieve, it seems like everything's kind of spinning off a little bit because the vision is obscured. And the vision is obscured because some part of you seems to be still focusing on what it is that you have lost, what it is that you feel resentful about, what it is that you feel perhaps even bitter about. Right? Some way that you feel like you have been done wrong, that is coming out in your words and your actions. And it's kind of, it feels like it's kind of pushed you into a corner. So in terms of steps forwards, there isn't anything that's really clear at this point. In terms of, you know, your incredibly dexterous mind, particularly when it comes to, you know, solving problems and things like that, there doesn't seem to be an out here anywhere. And even though you might be putting one foot in front of the other, this feeling that things have shifted recently, but not really knowing what that means, seems to be coming to the surface. Now, when we come into your current energy, we've got the Four of Swords, and that feels more to me like a tactical retreat than anything else. You know, it's a card that can speak about healing, and it can talk about taking a step back and whatnot, giving yourself a break and something. But it's tactical retreat because something hasn't gone the way that you expected to go. So you expected it to go. Something hasn't quite played out the way that you had intended. We've got the Page of Wands. We've got the Two of Pentacles there. And the Page of Wands is about preparation for some sort of movement. All right, it's not the movement itself. It's like, these are the things that I'm putting in place. And we could see how that would feed into the Capricornian kind of, well, I'm getting ready to do a thing. I'm ready to go off in a direction. There's some sort of plan that I'm getting ready to execute. But he seems to be blocked by the Two of Pentacles and the Wheel of Fortune. Like, these cards don't seem to be supporting each other. The Page of Wands seems to be blocked by the energy of these here. We've got this emotional maelstrom going on in the background, and somebody who is completely focused on the Pentacles. Now, this is a Capricorn card down here, and I often, you know, it feels to me often that this card is talking about performative actions of coping. And what do I mean by performative? Well, it's for the benefit of the view of everybody else. You know, you're aware that things aren't quite going the way that you want them to, and there's emotions here. I mean, we haven't just got a bit of a puddle on the water. We've got it lapping up around your legs, and like I said, that sense of being kind of in peril where you are. But we've also got this stuckness over here. And it feels like a record skipping, if any of you are old enough to remember record skipping. You know, when the needle used to just jump and it would just hit the same point. There's some sort of deep emotional thing here that is trying to surface, and no matter how much you try to focus on doing things the way that you have always done them, you don't seem to be able to move past it. Now, the Wheel of Fortune is a block on the energy of the Page of Wands, because the Wheel of Fortune is saying there's a really deep lesson here for you. There's a deep learning that needs you to look at what was emotionally difficult so that you can process it and move through it. You see all of these 4 fixed signs here on the Wheel of Fortune. They've got books in their hands. They're studying. They're learning. What's happening here is an opportunity to level up, an opportunity to grow. But the universe seems to suggest that it has to happen in one way and one way only. And the usual methods that you would have of, solution-oriented thinking, problem-solving, kind of, maybe it's even just completely ignoring a thing, aren't the way that you're allowed to progress anymore. It's not about what's going on outside of you. It very much is about putting the pentacles down and turning around and looking at the emotion. Like, that's the way out is through. Tell me about this 2 of Pentacles. We've got the 4 of Swords again. And we've got the Knight of Swords. And we've got the 5 of Swords. Now, it's a lot of swords there. There's a lot of mental activity here. But the 5 of Swords is absolutely my card of going around in circles with yourself in the way that you are thinking about things. It suggests an instability. And an instability is necessary for you to be able to notice where the 8 of Swords is in play. Now, the 4 of Swords is also a card of meditation. It's a card of mental peace. And it seems to me that there's a stepping back from a position that you have held that is necessary for you to kind of go back over. Because the 4 is a foundational level card. It's like, what is the foundation of your thinking? How have you arrived where you are? And is there a possibility that at any point between where it started and where you are now, that you may have taken a wrong turn somewhere? Because the 5 of Swords would say absolutely that is the case. And, the arrival at the 8 of Swords would also support that. And we've got this very stuck emotional energy with the 5 of Cups. The 5 of Cups is a card of deep grief. And the thing is, with that 2 of Pentacles card there, the one that literally represents Capricorn, that deep grief is playing out in the background, but away from the awareness and the observations of the main character in the card. It feels like you're being pulled up short here so that you can open a dialogue with this more emotional part of you. And almost to some extent, retrace your steps in your thinking and see where it is that it's stuttering. Like, where is the record skipping? Where is the CD skipping? Why is it going over the same thing over and over again? I mean, it's quite likely that you're actually finding yourself stuck on something, quite literally, going over it again and again and again and trying to work out how it happened like this. Now, where you have to be careful is where you are holding somebody else responsible for it, where you are attributing blame for a situation that you find yourself in right now, that somebody else seems to hold the power in. Remember, we've got a multitude of 8s on the table, and what these are trying to do is show you where your power is. And your power is not in the control of circumstances outside of you. It's not in the control of people outside of you. The control is always about what is going on within. And it's a really powerful thing to be able to challenge your thinking, or even to be open to challenging your thinking on something that has really wounded you, something that has really hurt you in the past. It's like I said, all the work here actually is being placed directly at your feet, Capricorn. The only thing that the universe seems to be doing is just kind of holding you in place at the moment. Now, I think if you were to be able to move in any direction, what we would see would be an avoidance of what is emotionally difficult right here. And that in some ways would represent a default that the universe seems to be trying to get you to work through so that you can break through, if I can put it that way. And there are lots of different ways that this could be playing out. I mean, you know, one of the things that we must always be aware of is that if we have experienced things, whether PTSD or CPTSD, like in nature, if we have experienced some sort of trauma that has occurred to us, you know, in youth, if we intellectually look back on it, right, with our older brains, we can kind of look at a situation and say, well, it's completely unreasonable to feel like that, so I'm not going to feel like that, and that's it. Just put it in a bucket and stick it in the shed. Forget about it. But emotions don't just evaporate. And I think there's been an assumption on your part that those emotions, right, that were connected to whatever was very difficult in your past have been in that bucket so long they've just evaporated, and there's no water in there anymore. It's not a thing, it's just empty. But the reality of the situation is that somehow your entire shed is now underwater. And there are sea creatures in there and all sorts of, I don't know where I'm going with this metaphor. It's time to go deal with the mess. It's time to go deal with the emotional maelstrom and see how what has been obscured from your conscious mind has actually been subconsciously influencing your thinking for a very, very long time, such that it may have caused you to think about things in the wrong way or take yourself down a path that has led to a dead end that feels unnavigable. It just feels like there's no way out of that at all. Well, there is a way, but it involves going backwards a little just to check the route that you took. Now, we are in a Mercury retrograde at the moment, started on the 1st of April, will conclude on the 25th of April, but the shadow period will take us through to almost the second week in May. So there's some time to work through this, but I would put money on this being the thing that you're being asked to work through at this time. And it's probably going to feel like it's the thing that you least want to engage with. But when we come into April proper, we've got the 8 of Wands and we've got the 8 of Pentacles in reverse. Now, the 8 of Pentacles in the upright is a card of mastery. It's a card of being disciplined and being committed to a certain course of action and doing it again and again and again until we become really, really good at this, right? It is, in fact, something that we have mastered. And because it's the Pentacles suit, we're really talking about resources. And I'm not just talking about your money. I'm not even talking about your job. I'm talking about where your attention goes. I'm talking about what it is that you invest in, what it is that you actually put the effort in getting good at. And I can't help but think for some of you in April there is going to be a really standout conversation where what is revealed to you, and it's not even really revealed to you, it's your mind following, putting things together. That's often the way that I talk about the Page of Swords, because it's actually an incredibly creative card. Well, it's mentally creative because it sees connections between things that were previously obscured, right? It's a page, so there's an initiatory quality to it. But it is taking something that you already have and expanding it. It's not some, huge, great epiphany. It's kind of tying things together that you did not realize went together, and your view expanding as a result. I think for some of you, you're going to see where you wandered down the wrong path, right? Where there was perhaps a commitment to something that kind of took you a little bit off center. Now, remember that the presence of the eights are saying that we're trying to power you up here, we're trying to empower you. But in the first instance, that may feel like entirely the opposite. It might feel like a kind of stripping down. But I would suggest that it is important for you to stay the course with this. Now, the Eight of Wands can speak to situations also changing rapidly. There's a whole other side of this that I could talk about, but I'm not sure if I want to go into it too much. Let's pull up another card about the Eight of Pentacles. Let's see. We've got the Nine of Wands, and we've got the Sun in reverse, and we've got the Five of Wands. Yeah, I mean, it's not really... It's not really as dominant as an interpretation as the way I'm going, but it's certainly something that I can see for some of you. And so I'm going to have to bring it up. And that's that, you know, for some of you, there's either going to be a change of employment or a demotion or some sort of pay cut or even a loss of a job, like whether you've, you know, whether your company's restructuring and suddenly your position is no longer, you know, a position within the job, within the work sphere. Like, if you take the Eight of Pentacles to simply refer to your work, as in that which you do to earn money, then there is a possibility of loss there. Some of you might, with the Five of Wands being there, actually come, you know, find how do we term it, you know, find yourself on oh, I'm really struggling here with that. Give me a second. The Five of Wands is conflict. Now, that can be internal conflict or it can be external conflict. So you might find yourself coming into conflict with people in the work sphere, and that could be sufficient to find you either quitting your job or being released from your job. That's possible. The Five of Wands could also see you potentially trying to fight for your position, but I feel like that's a little less Five of Wands and a little bit more Seven of Wands. So we're going to go with that a little less than before. But the Nine of Wands is resilience. The Nine of Wands is a need to take ownership of your behaviours, the actions that you take. But we also have the Sun in reverse. The Sun in reverse generally is given to be a positive card, no matter which way it turns out, because it's so glaringly positive. But in this instance, with everything else that's going on here, it feels more like the sun's setting on a particular thing. Now, this is kind of following a theme that was coming out in the 3-month overviews. Not specifically to do with work, but definitely a closing out of a particular way of doing things, or, you know, a particular avenue of your attention where your energy's been going, kind of closing down in favor of a new one emerging. Now, this struggle and this strife here could be internal and could be external. May or may not involve your job. But what holds true, no matter which interpretation we follow, is that something is closing out here and asking you to look at doing things differently. I would not be surprised if there is a very important conversation that happens for you this month, whether that's with a boss, whether it's with a I don't know, a family member, a friend, someone down, the supermarket, whatever, because there seems to be a bit of a light bulb going on here somewhere. And I feel like when that light bulb goes on, what we've got is a dam opening where all of the emotion that has been hitherto kind of penned up somewhere else comes out. And what I've got is an overwhelming feeling of confusion that is very difficult to articulate in response to that. The Five of Wands is Saturn in Leo. Saturn is the ruling planet of Capricorn. It's about work, it's about delayed gratification, it's about doing things properly over and over again. Very much like, we would expect to see in the Eight of Pentacles, but the Eight of Pentacles is reversed here. It feels like your normal way of doing things isn't open to you. Something's got to change, and it feels like there's a domino effect here where one thing gets flicked over and then suddenly, before you know it, everything's picked up speed, everything's accelerating. And the issue is also the solution. Like I said before, if you can recognize the Eight of Swords for what it is, rather than perceiving it as a block or an obstacle to your will moving forwards, if you can recognize that it is necessary to rewind, reevaluate, reassess, reconsider, and not just situations that have occurred, but what was going on within you when these situations were occurring. I think there's a possibility of uncovering some incredible internal revelations that very rapidly are having you look at the world in a very different way. This is really interesting, Capricorn. I'm going to go and do the extended now. So if you'd like to join me while we dig into April specifically, we might get a bit more clarity on whether this is work or whether this is something else over there. You're very welcome to do so. You can do that on Circle, or you can do that on Vimeo. I would be delighted to see you in either place. But if neither of those appeal to you, I think you should be ready for some high frustration this month, but also some bizarre kind of, I was going to say sort of slingshot energy, but actually what I was told was boomerang. You're definitely going back to something, and this would make sense with the rewind, reevaluate, reassess, of the retrograde. It feels like a very rapid dismantle and remantling of self, if I can put it that way. But there's a lot about it that is incredibly challenging and personally confrontational. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.